that is going to flood the market in other economies, and that's something that I think really needs to be focused on. And then another issue that nobody has discussed here is trust in institutions. I think we've seen an erosion of trust in institutions, particularly since the pandemic, and this is particularly acute in a lot of democratic countries. Democracy is messy, but we like it. So, I do think that people in power, and right now I'm not in government, but people who are governing others, there's a consent to be governed, and they need to keep in mind that you have to rebuild trust in institutions, and that includes at the multilateral level. I came from the World Bank. There were already schisms that were happening at the World Bank, and since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I hear that things have gotten worse. I don't think that they have been able to put out a communique at their annual or spring meetings since the invasion, and I think that's sad. I think the first speaker talked about the importance of coming together and talking to each other, and I think that we need to be able to do that. But I do think that there is this schism now happening in these multilateral institutions, and there's sort of a secondary type of multilateral institutions that are being built up to challenge sort of the original multilateral institutions, and I think that we all need to work together.
Jennifer, thank you very much indeed. Shukrat Vafayev, I come to you last in this particular round. Obviously, Uzbekistan has faced challenges and has ways of getting around those challenges. I was impressed this morning when I heard the president say that eventually the aim will be a 40% target for green energy. That's pretty impressive. Shukrat, how do you see things?
Thank you, Charles, and thank you, my all distinguished colleagues who share their views and considerations here. Well, of course, Uzbekistan is not free from challenges, as we probably affected as any country in the process of development. And among the most important challenges faced by our economy these days is all the same usual suspects. It's the interest rates, it's the climate change impact, it's increased cost of transportation and logistical services. But as you probably sense from today's discussions and today's interventions by His Excellency, our President, his motto is challenges exist to be dealt with or to be overcome. And this is how he basically instructs us, instructs his government, and this is how we work, trying not only deal with challenges, but also benefit from opportunities that these challenges create. Very often, for example, with technological progress, we benefited a lot thanks to rapidly going down prices of renewable energy. We are benefiting a lot from very rapid development of IT sector, and with a lot of young Uzbeks finding jobs and adding value both in Uzbekistan and outside in this sector. And I think again, it's very difficult to find a magic bullet for all challenges, but what we have to do in Uzbekistan to be able to face these challenges, to stay strong and weather all of them, is to continue reforms, to act responsibly as a member of international community, especially when it's concerned the global efforts, for example, on emission reductions or weathering climate change impacts. And of course, develop and maintain the economic growth and provide more opportunities for the private sector, bring more players which are more dynamic, more proactive, more creative than traditional state players in the economy, and pass the largest share of economic activity to the private sector. And this is where we are, and this is work. So the motto is just sleep. If you face a challenge, roll up your sleeves and start working.
I think
Thank
that
you.
should be the motto, by the way, for this panel. Challenges exist to be overcome. I think that's, I like that. Thank you very much indeed, Shukrat. Okay, so let's talk about how those challenges might be overcome. What are the strategies to get through that? Qais bin Mohammed Al Yusuf, if I could go back to you now. What sort of strategies? I mean, obviously, in this sort of multi-crisis world that we face, regular crises, you know, you have to be agile, you have to be fleet of foot, it favors that. But what sort of strategies are you pursuing in Oman?
Sometimes the strategies could be conflicting to what really countries are doing. So for example, when the pandemic happened, what did it taught us to do? To be more protectionist. So, whereas the answer is having more global trade and having more, being part of the global supply chain. So it becomes conflicting in terms of the right thing to do is that, but actually what's happening on the ground is something totally different. And how do you work in the world where all of us try to work within the WTO and its guiding principles, where trade overall makes it better for the global growth and economic growth. So in Oman, for example, we're blessed to have a new Sultan, Sultan Haytham, who came in power at a very difficult time, like when we all came, like my good friend here, my dear friend Abdullah, we all came 2020, and we had a new Sultan, and he brought with him a new Renaissance 2.0. So what I'm trying to say is the right thing to do, of course, is still believing in global trade, still believing, and what Jennifer said, if I may, is we really, we lost trust in some of the global organizations. And likewise, on the local level, there has been a gap between the people and what people want and between institutions, and how can we bridge the gap? So that's why I think each country will have its own strategies in dealing with it. Our strategy was, what are our main challenges? One, creating jobs. Two, maintaining economic growth. Three, economic diversification. This is our true north. So Oman, with the blessings of our Sultan, His Majesty, we launched Oman's Vision 2040, paving the way for the next 20 years, focusing on pillars which are important, such as human development, such as economic diversification, sustainability, like when we spoke about climate change and how it will all impact us. Since sustainability and environment became a very important part of our growth, and governance and institutions, meaning although we are a monarchy, but we believe in institutions, so that all becomes what? How can you really make it easy for investors to come in, change the whole law? All the laws are like new on the privatization laws, foreign investment law, bankruptcy law. So change the legal framework, redesign your processes, redesign how you introduce technology and digitalization to make it even better, with keeping all those three targets. So really, I can go on, but I think I want to end up by saying each country will have to then select, because you cannot be doing everything. And one thing we focused on with all the challenges which has happened, where we want to be known to be part of the global scene, is to be part in the green hydrogen, where we believe Oman can be an important part where the investors can look at, and that brings the trust of where you can actually complement each other rather than compete in this and be part of the global supply chain. So Oman plans to be the 6th producer of green hydrogen by the year 2030, producing about 1.3 million tons of hydrogen in that year. And how can you benefit from having the upstream and downstream opportunities? So I think it will be unique in every country, but we still have to believe in global trade, in being part of the supply chain. Despite all what's happening, we have to go back and really looking at the bigger picture. So I'll stop there.
More integration, Thank you very much indeed, Minister, for that. Let me turn to UAE and Abdullah bin Tuqar. So what we talked, just heard about it, making a selection of strategies. What's your selection of strategies for getting through this?
I'll start off where His Excellency Qais have finished. I think, so if you ask an economist about the challenges of the world, there's only one graph he will return back to and use it as a reference. And that graph is the supply and demand graph, right? So what we have as uncertainty, the problems we have today is the supply and demand. Why the inflation is going up? Because there is high demand and less supply. Why the interest rate is going up? Because that's the only medicine to keep the inflation low. So this is the kind of formula, the basic formula for any economist when you look at the world. Now, what you have is challenges you put to it from geopolitics, from geoeconomics, from the US and China, for instance, from the Red Sea challenges, from technological disruptions, from climate change. You're just adding to this graph of supply and demand, and you're saying to it, I'm going to make sure it's going to get more expensive. Now, for any economist, we need to think about is how do we return this back to normal? And the consumer, on the other hand, no one's talking about the consumer, and because everything that goes up, the consumer will start being, chargeable to pay for it. What the UAE took, and I think the most important aspect is the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement that we have agreed on, and we already signed about 12 to 13 of them. Opening trade, opening bilateral trade with countries. We have one in discussion at the moment with Uzbekistan. We have many as well in the region. We have signed with about 12 to 13 countries. We announced them the last 3-4 years, and this is something which we are opening bilateral trade to give more supply for the demand that we're seeing in our economy and the economy of the region. And that's the only way to keep this kind of graph when you look at it. And how do you manage it and address it, is address it in a way to look at supply and demand. Now, yes, we understand the climate change, we understand the technology, we understand that as well. So the UAE looks at it from an opportunity perspective as well. Our economy, doing such policies in the last 4 years, managed to grow in 2022, 7.9% in GDP, and 7.2% in non-oil. 2023 was as well 5.9% in non-oil GDP, which gave us as well a 73% non-oil GDP in the UAE. Historically never happened before. This is the first time our economy reaches 73%. And we want to grow that to 75, 76, maybe reach to 80% non-oil GDP in the UAE. That's the target that we're putting in. Looking at that with an eye on the supply and demand chart back again and making sure that there's enough supply for the demand we have. We have established something called the Green Growth Strategy. We're focusing on 4 major elements. We now understand the world is moving on the demand of the green growth, but we are looking at the green growth from a supply perspective. So what are the 4 supply aspects of green growth? Number 1 is we want to focus on green industrial zones. Zones are focused to make sure that we produce from renewable energy, standards, and as well waste, manage circular economy within that zone. Number 2, we're looking at green IP, innovation protection, and IPing as well greener technology in that area. Number 3, we're looking at the know-how of carbon accounting, and how can we export the knowledge of that, and I think and that moving forward. And number 4, the last one is critical minerals. The president this morning mentioned the critical minerals here in Uzbekistan. What are the critical minerals? There are 4 critical minerals which are very important for renewable energy: nickel, copper, lithium, cobalt. These 4 minerals, 2 of them, lithium and copper, are here in Uzbekistan. This is the most important aspect because to produce renewables, batteries, solar panels, you need to invest in critical minerals. How do you do that? How do you process that? The UAE is processing bauxite, for instance. The UAE doesn't own a bauxite mine anywhere in the world. We own a processing called EGA, Emirates Global Aluminium. We managed to produce the finest aluminium. We produce this aluminium. We export this aluminium even to the US. And I think today the UAE can bring an expertise to the world that we can process as well critical minerals in copper, lithium, cobalt, and nickel, and making sure it's available from our green industrial zone, IPing the technology, making sure it's available for the world and help the world in greening and more decarbonization as well moving forward. These are our policies.
Thank you very much. It's a pretty impressive green agenda, actually. Thank you very much indeed, Minister. Let's go back to Europe. Michele Varga, your strategies for getting through this, fleet of foot, how do you do it? Yes.
I don't want to repeat my colleagues, but as a Minister of Finance, I have to mention the fiscal responsibility and consolidation. So the fiscal stability is a precondition of real and long-term economic growth. Therefore, fiscal consolidation must be a priority objective. So today is a worldwide program, including Hungary, and as a spillover effect of the war, the sanctions and the energy prices and crisis, the budget came under extreme pressure. So the first proposal, perhaps to cut the deficit, decrease the state debt, and of course it can help to minimize the cost of the household and corporate loans. So secondly, we have also boosted the economy through economic policy instruments and the tax policy that is intentionally based on tax consumption instead of production. So this tax policy proved successful, as today Hungary is recognized as one of the most enterprise-friendly tax system of the world. According to the European Commission, Hungary has achieved one of the largest whitening of the economy in Europe since 2010. And last but not least, another strategy is to develop our national economy towards an ever-increasing independence in such key areas as energy demands and food production. So sovereignty of an economy is also strongly related to the diversification of external energy sources and natural resources required by various supply chains. And finally, this is also relates to the connectivity in our foreign policy. So Hungary is among the 10 most open economies of the world. These huge advantages in the field of connectivity, foreign investments and international trade, and I agree with the ministers that the openness and the connectivity and cooperation is the best for the world to solve these problems.
Thank you very much, and I've certainly been very impressed at actually how early on Hungary spotted the opportunities here, actually, and forged the relationship. You know, that was pretty early on, actually, ahead of most other European countries. You know, that's pretty smart thinking. Thank you very much indeed. Abdulhamid Al Khalifa, let me ask you, you have to find strategies for engaging with all the countries that are suffering these challenging moments.
Yes, and I can summarize them in 2 words: sustainable development. And underneath this title comes lots of details, but I will try to summarize it. Maybe what Their Excellencies mentioned about connectivity and liberal and open economic policies is very, very important, and it should be respected. His Excellency mentioned that during COVID, everybody backed up, but it should be the other way around, and we are focusing on that. The second is, of course, climate or climate policies and how to have a green transition that is very detailed and cannot impact negatively the development. It is very important to keep that in mind. Usually, some policies goes to the extreme, and they came up with a very negative impact on the countries. Third is regional approach. As we heard today, there is a regional cooperation here in Central Asia, under the Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation, and we are part of that. We have done some projects, road projects and other projects that connect the countries. This is just an example because we are in Uzbekistan, and the region here is part of this kind of regional development. Fourth is digital transformation, which is also very important because everybody is moving into that direction, and We are also working on that direction with our partner countries. This will have an impact on the efficiency and also productivity of different sectors within the economy. Fifth is governance, which is very, very important aspect of any development or any reform agenda. And governance comes with also very important conditions, but I would mention one of them, which is institutions. If you have strong institutions and a good implementation plan, then you will have a good reform. Otherwise, you will not be able to do that. So that is, in summary, what I think is coming under sustainable development.
Actually, and you could argue, couldn't you, strong institutions are even more important than ever at a time of volatility, of course, at a time when they're probably even more fragile than ever in some ways, but building them up, definitely crucial. Thank you very much indeed. Jennifer, I know time is running away from us, but what's your top tip for navigating all of this?
In the United States, I think we had an election in the middle of COVID, and so, and I'll say it again, I currently do not work in the government, so I'm not officially speaking for anybody right now, but I would say, the prior administration was focused on economic reform. Tax reform was very important. Tax reform in the United States is very, very difficult to achieve. Our legislature, it's just very, very difficult to achieve. The last major tax reform we had was in 1986, and so 30 years later, 2017, major tax reform focused on corporate tax reform because the US was not competitive with the rest of the OECD, and so we lowered our corporate taxes, and that really did actually give a nice boost to the economy. We got a lot of companies to move back to the US, which was very important. And a lot of regulatory reform. Our regulatory state, I couldn't describe the thousands of pages, hundreds of thousands of pages of regulations that we have. And so the rule was if you add a regulation, you have to subtract 2. And that actually worked quite well. And then I would say post-COVID, the current administration, the typical response to an economic shock in the United States is always stimulus. There was a lot of stimulus spending, which in turn, caused excess savings. The United States, as everybody here knows, is mainly a consumer economy. 70% of our GDP is consumer spending. And so a lot of dollars were sent through the system that caused excess savings. And I know one of the other ministers talked about supply and demand. And so there weren't the supply chains, and there was a lot of demand, and that caused rampant inflation that our central bank, again, that is the only tool that they have. And so they've had to raise interest rates. And they've done a decent job. They're not finished yet. And it's going to be, I think that last mile is going to be very, very difficult for them. The other thing that the current administration has done is industrial policy, which is quite unusual for the United States. That's not something that my country has done in a long time. So it's a policy experiment. We'll see what happens. And a lot of it has been with green energy as well as chips, trying to. We talked about supply, retrenchment that's trying to bring all those supply chains back to the United States. For instance, solar panels, most people don't realize, were invented in the United States, but we completely lost our ability to manufacture them. And then just, a last point on economic dynamism, that's something that in the United States, we're generally a very entrepreneurial economy, but there are signs of cracks. Certainly before the pandemic, and then an odd thing happened during the pandemic is we had an explosion in entrepreneurship, which was great because we had gotten to the point where our dynamism, we had more firms dying that were being born, and then we've had this little boomlet of entrepreneurship, I think because people were locked up in their houses and they thought, why not? Why not start a business? And so we'll see if that lasts. It's very positive.
Thank you very much. Yes, and on interest rates higher for longer is yet again the word today, I think, from the US Federal Reserve. Shukra, I'm going to give you the last word here in Uzbekistan. The top tip for getting through all of this, what is the number one priority for getting through all of this?
Well, of course, for Uzbekistan as a developing country and emerging economy, economic growth, and especially sustainable economic growth, is probably even more important than to more industrial countries. And the recipes, they are all known, and we are working based on experience of other countries, based on best practices we learn from others. It's, of course, economic growth, targeting better productivity in all sectors, resource efficiency, while maintaining macroeconomic stability and certain amount of monetary and fiscal buffers, which are always good to have at difficult times, like it happened during COVID. Improving connectivity. We're working on that through improving relations with our neighbors, reducing all barriers. Continued improvement of governance. I fully support my colleagues who raise this importance of this aspect of sustainability, and we continuously work on improving the governance, increasing accountability, and improving and strengthening institutions. And since we very much rely in our strategies on investors and potential investors especially, building a conducive and comfortable environment for them, it's extremely important. This is important priority for us. And of course, capitalize on national endowments. It's first of all our mineral resources, second is our agriculture, but even more important is our human resources, which are young, which are active, well-educated, and ready to work. And of course, promoting partnership with all our partners. And leapfrog wherever you can in technologies, in knowledge, in education, in industries. And we benefit a lot from our partnership with many countries, representatives of them here. We receive a lot of support from the United Arab Emirates. We have traditional partner, Sultanate of Oman, who supported us. We learn from Saudi Arabia, we learn from Singapore, we learn from European countries, and we, of course, support this interest to help us to facilitate and be a part of our growth history. Thank you.
Shukrat, thank you very much indeed. And I think on any one of these issues, we could have spent an hour probably. Thank you for helping us keep it to 40 minutes. I'm glad we only identified still 3 colors of swan. That probably would have lengthened it if we'd had any more colors. A big thank you to our distinguished panel. Thank you, all of you, for doing such an interesting job in helping us to understand the challenges that you face. So thank you, and thank you to our audience as well. I wish you all a very good rest of the day. Thank you.